Hi crafters, it's my daughter's 9th birthday and she wanted me to make her a Velociraptor cake. And she wanted to make sure that I wasn't just getting a stick on and putting it on the cake. I needed to actually make something cool. And so of course my mind went into overdrive and I designed this cake in my head. So we started by cutting out some pieces of wood that I thought might be a good base for the cake, and this is what I imagined the inside would look like, and so I asked Alex to help me to cut it. It was quite simple. All we needed to do was use a jigsaw, and we used some offcuts and propped them up so that that could be the inside of the dinosaur's mouth and we could put the cake on the top. So watch as we construct this, and I want you to know from the very beginning that I am not a cake maker. I have no idea when it comes to baking. I literally am using Woolies cakes because they're there, and I'm also time poor. And I've never been shown how to do any fondant icing or decorating or anything like this. This is my second cake. So if you're a cake maker, I'm sure there's lots of tricks and things that you know how to do better. But from a complete novice's perspective, I feel like I did pretty well. So the main things you'll need is your wood base, which you've seen us construct, a platter or something to put the cake onto, some alfoil. I used some silver spray paint, which is edible. I got this from Spotlight, and the same with the edible pens. And this I got from a cake store, and it's 3 kilos of fondant icing. So the first thing I did was I wanted to cover the wood with alfoil, one to protect the cake and also to give it some shape. So I did a couple of layers just to make sure everything was good. The next thing I wanted to make with the alfoil was the inside of the tongue. I thought I could make a base and then put the icing over it. So I just kept layering it and shaping it, and you'll see that it comes together quite well. But here we are with the cakes, so I'm just going to plonk them on top. And I'm not even going to remove the icing because I mean it's delicious anyway, so that's fine. You can see that I'm very rough here, I'm just rushing. And we're just plonking the cake down wherever we think, cutting little bits, putting it here and there. Once I'm happy with the shape, I clean up a little bit, and then we look at opening the fondant. I couldn't remember the first time that I'd used fondant before, and I thought, wow, it's really hard. So what we did was we cut it up into little pieces, and then we just put it in the microwave for just 10 seconds or so, just to give it that little bit of softness. Doing this really transformed its usability, so we were able to start rolling it and imagining how this all might come together. There was lots of hands, as you can see, helping. To give my daughter a little project to work on by herself, I thought I'd give her the tongue. And so I put a couple of drops of red food dye in some icing. And as you can see, it gets quite sticky. And what we figured was that if you put a little bit more icing sugar, the powdery stuff in there, then it makes it a lot more less sticky and more, more like Play-Doh, so that you can start shaping it. Here's Captain Alex happily rolling the first layer of fondant. We're going to put this bit over the cake and then do the base shape before we do another layer. So sticky, but yes, I was worried that the red food dye would stain all the lovely white fondant that we had, but it washed off quite quickly after I'd shaped it into a nice ball. You can see me putting the sugar here. Comes together quite quickly. And surprisingly, it didn't lose too much colour. I thought it might have gone pink, but it still kept a nice red colour to it. It's useful if you can have 4 hands to help you put the fondant on. So we'd rolled it out on baking paper so that it didn't stick to the bench, and then carefully we just flipped it upside down over the cake. And then just started pressing it in. This layer is very important in shaping the actual dinosaur head. So we did a lot of work in pressing here and there and making the nostrils and enhancing where the eyes will go. To help us, we kept looking back at our reference photo just to maybe change here and there, but I probably looked at it maybe 15 times along the line of making this cake. We decided not to put cake on the base layer of the bottom jaw, so we just used fondant to start shaping this and making it look good, because we figured there's enough cake on the top, we don't need a second layer down there. And then we made some little snaky type things, and using a little bit of water, we just pressed that onto where we wanted to build up some areas. So this is me building up the jaw of the bottom of the dinosaur. There was a few other areas that I needed to build up, so just using water and a massaging technique, I added a couple of extra layers. It looks like a little bit of a mess as you go through the stages, but everything can be changed, and if you don't like it, just add a few bits. I didn't really like the nose, or the top of the bridge of the nose, so I added those snake bits to kind of build it up a little bit more and give it more of a shape. And you can see in the background Alex is starting to shape the tongue, which looks good. While Captain Alex is rolling up the final piece of the fondant to go over the top, I am making sure that I'm happy with the shape of it, because if you're not happy with the shape before you put the final fondant on, it's a little bit harder to change from there. So I'm just fussing around and making sure that I like the shape, and here we go, top layer. And as you can see, it's starting to come together. It's a lot smoother. It's looking more like a dinosaur. There's less to kind of catch your eye. So I'm just smoothing and using a little bit of powdery sugar to help me. I'm cutting off the base there. Giving my dinosaur a good massage. Patting in his eyeballs and his nostrils. We needed to add one more layer around the back, and that was quite easy, just using a little bit of water to join it. Just play with the shape until you're happy. Here's the tongue. I'm quite happy with it. It's really big. I'm just shaping it a little bit more, making sure that it's perfect before we go ahead. So here's the fun bit. You can use anything you can find to texture the fondant, and on the weekends we're lucky to live in an old chef's house, so we had lots of tools. These are some of our favourites. One looked like a spiky scourer type thing. That's the green thing that Alex is using, and I'm using a circle cutter and just pressing into it. Dinosaurs have lots of scales and textures and things like that, so I didn't want it to be smooth at all. We tried a few different ones, but the first ones were definitely our favourite. Once you're happy with the texture, then you can start to paint it. I was really happy that I got this spray paint. It's a metallic silver from Spotlight. It was really easy to use, so I used the entire can, just kind of covering the outside of the dinosaur. And then we used just normal water and food colouring to do some highlights. We tried a spray bottle, but we found that it dripped way too much, so I found it much easier to use a paintbrush to do the highlights. And we started painting the inside of the mouth, but to me it looked really fake, so I wiped it off, and I made a darker type of colour using a bit of blue and a bit of other colours to try and make that blacky brown, and I redid it a couple of times. The paint was a work in progress, so we kept trying different things, and this is not finished yet, but I decided to start putting the teeth on because we could paint around it. So to make the teeth, we just rolled the fondant. I did buy some extra hardening thing for the icing, but I didn't end up using it because I found that it was quite fine just the way that it was. I think some sticky fingers just found their way onto my lens on my phone, but I hope you can see through the fog. It's time to make the eyeball, so I mixed the fondant in with some orange colour, and I decided how big I wanted it just by holding it up next to it, and then made it into an eyeball shape. And using a little bit of water, I stuck it on. And then using the back of a spoon, I just pressed around and around because I wanted to try and shape some eyelids out of the existing fondant there. Just play until you're happy. Once you like the shape of the eyelids and the eyeball, you can use some black paint pen to draw on the pupils. Now, if you've got more time than I do, wait until the fondant dries before you start trying to use these pens because they don't really like soft fondant, but I persevered anyway. I just think that they would work much better on something that was dry. Using the pens, I also decided to give the eyelids a little bit of shadowing. I used the black and the blue. To give the eye a little bit more depth, I used some of the pens. I used yellow on the middle and I used orange and red on the outside, and what this did was it just gave it more of a 3D effect. I added a tiny little highlight of white fondant on the eyeball. Then I cleaned it up and it was all done. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this has inspired you to make any sort of cake. It doesn't have to just be a dinosaur. You can do anything really with fondant. It's amazing. But make sure you subscribe to my other videos, and I'll be making many more things in the future. Thanks very much. Bye.
Finally!
No, don't cut it.
Yes,
Please don't.
I'm cutting it.
What if it bites you?
I don't care.
With that knife.
Is there gonna be blood?
I thought
No.
about putting jam in there so it looks like blood.
No, I hate him. Adia, cut this. That's easy. Oh, pretty easy. I feel the piece in there, Mum. What piece?
Going through it.
Ah! What's the piece? Yeah.
Birthday girl, what part do you want? The eyeball?
Yeah! I want the eyeball!
Straight down the middle.
I want the eyeball! Where? Me too. I want to.
Oh, that's a big piece.
Oh! Just a little bit of the eyeball there.
I want a piece.
I want just a little eyeball. I want an
The
eyeball.
brain. Who wants the brain?
No!
No.
Me.
Hang on.
Might be more clever with the brain.